June sat alone in the back corner of the classroom. His desk was slightly larger than those of his classmates to accommodate his human frame. The artificial lights of Station Epsilon shone through the large viewing window, casting a blue glow across the room. Outside, the stars looked different than they did from Earth. June still wasn't used to that. "Today we will discuss interspecies communication methods," said Professor Minji. The tall Centaurian teacher moved gracefully across the front of the classroom. Her forearms gestured in different directions as she activated the holographic display. June tried to focus on taking notes. He had been at the Galactic Academy for only 3 months. As the only human in his class, he worked twice as hard to prove himself. Humans had achieved faster than light travel just 30 years ago. They were newcomers to the galactic community. Many species still viewed them as primitive. Telepathic species have natural advantages in certain diplomatic situations. Professor Minji continued. Can anyone explain why? Taiho, a proximan with sleek silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly purple, raised his hand. Because we can sense emotional states without relying on physical cues that might differ between species. Excellent, Taiho, said Professor Minji. June felt something brush against his mind. A whisper that wasn't quite words. Then came the snickering. From the back row, Taiho and his friends were trying to communicate telepathically with him again. They knew humans couldn't receive or send telepathic messages. They did it just to remind him of his limitations. Perhaps our human classmate can tell us how his species compensates for their biological shortcomings in communication, said Taiho loudly. The class went quiet. All 20 alien students turned to look at June. Some had multiple eyes. Others had no visible eyes at all, but he felt all of them watching. Professor Minji frowned slightly. An interesting question, though perhaps not ideally phrased. June, would you like to respond? June took a deep breath. Humans rely on verbal and nonverbal communication. We have developed thousands of spoken languages and writing systems. We also pay close attention to body language and voice tones. How primitive, whispered Duri, one of Taiho's friends. Her green scales rustled as she leaned toward Taiho. Imagine having to listen to noise to understand meaning. June pretended not to hear. He was used to these comments by now. Actually, Professor Minji said, human communication methods are quite sophisticated despite their non-telepathic nature. Their languages contain complex structures for conveying abstract concepts. This is today's lesson. Different evolutionary paths lead to different, but equally valid communication systems. June felt grateful to Professor Minji for defending him, but he wished she would do more about the daily harassment. He suspected she believed he needed to learn to handle it himself. That was how things worked at the academy. Students from different worlds needed to learn to coexist. After class, June gathered his tablets and books. The academy used both digital and physical learning materials. As he reached his anti-gravity locker in the hallway, he entered his code. The locker should have opened smoothly. Instead, all his belongings came crashing to the floor. Oops, said Taiho, walking by with his friends. Looks like primitive technology fails again. June knelt down to pick up his things. He knew Taiho had tampered with his locker settings. It happened at least once a week. Need some help? June looked up to see Hana, a quiet proximan girl from his class. Unlike Taiho, she had never been mean to him. Thanks, June said as she helped him gather his scattered possessions. Taiho should not treat you that way, she said quietly. Not all proximans think like him. It's fine, June said, though it wasn't. I'm used to it. You should not have. To be used to it. Hana handed him his star chart. Your astrophysics test score was the highest in class yesterday. That is why Taiho is being worse than usual. June hadn't connected those events, but it made sense. He had scored a perfect 100 on the test. Taiho had gotten a 94. As they finished collecting his things, June's head suddenly felt strange. The hallway seemed to spin. His stomach lurched. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. He heard laughter from down the hall. Taiho and 3 of his friends stood watching. Their eyes glowed brighter than normal. They were using their telepathic abilities to make him feel disoriented and sick. Humans had no defense against this kind of attack. It wasn't technically against Academy rules because it left no physical evidence. It was just another way they reminded him of his place as the primitive human. Hana frowned at her fellow Proximans. "Stop it," she said firmly. Surprisingly, the sensation faded. June's head cleared. "Mind your own business, Hana," Taiho called, "unless you want to be treated like the human." Hana helped June reset his locker. "They should not be allowed to do that," she said. "Thanks for your help," June said, avoiding the topic. Complaining would only make things worse. He had 6 more months at the academy before he could return to Earth. He just needed to endure. Later that afternoon, all students gathered in the main lecture hall. Professor Minji stood at the center platform with a smile on her face. "I have exciting news," she announced. "Our next educational expedition has been approved. In 2 weeks, we will be taking a field trip to observe various ecosystems and societal structures." The students murmured with interest. The Academy's field trips were famous for visiting exotic locations across the galaxy. "Our destination," Professor Minji continued, "will be Earth." The room went silent. Then came the groans and complaints. Earth? The human planet? What could we possibly learn there? Isn't it dangerous? I heard they still have unpredictable weather patterns. June sat up straighter in his seat. Earth. Home. After months in space, he would walk under an open sky again. Feel real gravity. Breathe unfiltered air. Earth has been classified as a Category 4 planet by the Galactic Science Council, Professor Minji explained. It contains unique evolutionary paths and biological adaptations worthy of study. As one of our newer members in the galactic community, it is important to understand the environment that shaped human development. Taiho raised his hand. "Professor, is it safe? I heard Earth has extreme gravity and atmospheric pressure." His concerned tone was clearly fake. "All necessary safety equipment will be provided," Professor Minji assured him. "And we will have an excellent guide. June's sister works as a ranger in one of Earth's nature preserves. She will ensure our educational experience is both safe and comprehensive." All eyes turned to June again, but this time he didn't mind. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt a spark of hope. On Earth, things would be different. The others didn't understand what they were about to experience. June caught Taiho staring at him with narrowed eyes. The Proximan clearly wasn't happy about this development. "Prepare thorough research on Earth before our departure," Professor Minji instructed. "You will each present your findings to the class next week." As students filed out of the hall, June felt a small smile form on his face. Soon his classmates would see his homeworld, and maybe then they would understand. The week before the Earth trip was busy for everyone at the Galactic Academy. Professor Minji had assigned research projects about Earth's unique features. Each student had to prepare a presentation on a different aspect of the planet. June sat in the library section of the station, surrounded by holographic displays showing Earth's varied landscapes. Mountains, oceans, deserts, and forests appeared in rotating images around him. He felt a pang of homesickness as he watched a sunset over the Pacific Ocean. "Is that really what your sky looks like?" asked a voice. June turned to see Hana standing nearby, her purple eyes wide with interest. "Yes," he answered. "Earth skies change color throughout the day. They can be blue, pink, orange, red, or dark blue, turning to black at night." "Fascinating," said Hana, sitting down beside him. "On Proxima B, our sky is always deep red because of our sun." June nodded. He had learned about the different homeworlds of his classmates. Proxima Centauri was a red dwarf star, giving its planets a constant reddish light. "What topic did you choose for your presentation?" Hana asked. "Earth's varied ecosystems and survival adaptations," June replied. "I want to show how the different environments on Earth led to diverse life forms." "That sounds interesting," said Hana. "I chose Earth's water systems. Your planet has so much liquid water on its surface, it's very unusual. Their conversation was interrupted when Tejo and 3 of his friends entered the library. They were laughing loudly, something frowned upon in the quiet space. "Look, it's the human and his new friend," said Tejo with a smirk. "Researching his primitive planet?" One of Tejo's friends, a tall, thin alien named Daok, with blue skin and 4 arms, snickered. "My presentation is on primitive human entertainment. Their shows are so basic, they just stare at flat screens with simple moving images. And they still use wheels for transportation on some parts of their planet," added another named Suk. Her insect-like features clicked as she spoke. "Wheels, can you imagine?" June kept his face neutral. He had learned that showing anger only made things worse. "What's your topic, Tejo?" he asked calmly. "Human biological weaknesses," Tejo replied with a cold smile. "Did you know that Professor Minji categorized Earth as a Category 4 planet? That's just one level below a death world. Most species would find it unbearable." As Tejo and his friends moved away to another part of the library, Hana looked troubled. "Is that true?" she asked June. "Is Earth really a Category 4? June nodded slowly. "Yes, but that's only by galactic standards. For humans, it's perfectly comfortable. We evolved there, after all." June had been thinking about this since the trip was announced. Most of his classmates came from worlds with lower gravity, milder climates, and more stable weather patterns. Earth would feel harsh to them, but he hadn't wanted to say anything. Let them discover it themselves. The next day, all students presented their research. Most of them treated the assignment with obvious disdain. They showed incorrect information and made jokes about Earth's primitive features. When Tejo gave his presentation on human biology, he deliberately emphasized all the ways humans were physically weaker than other species. "Humans cannot regrow limbs," Tejo said, showing a diagram of a human body. "They cannot breathe underwater. They have no natural armor or claws. Their skin burns easily in sunlight. Their bones break under pressure. And perhaps most importantly, they have no telepathic abilities whatsoever." Professor Minji interrupted. "Tejo, you are neglecting to mention any human biological advantages." Tejo looked surprised. "Advantages, such as?" "Perhaps June's presentation will help answer that question," Professor Minji said, turning to June. "You're next." June stood and walked to the front of the class. He activated his holo display, showing a global map of Earth. "Earth has more varied ecosystems than most inhabited planets," June began, "from freezing polar regions to burning deserts, from high mountains to deep oceans. Humans have adapted to live in all these environments." He showed images of people living in different parts of Earth: desert dwellers, mountain climbers, deep sea, divers, and Arctic explorers. Unlike many species that evolved in more stable environments, humans developed extraordinary adaptability, June continued. "We can live in temperatures ranging from -50 to +50 degrees Celsius with minimal technology. Our bodies can adjust to different atmospheric pressures and oxygen levels." He highlighted human physical traits. "Humans have exceptional endurance. While we may not be the strongest species, we can outlast almost any other in prolonged physical activity. We also have very efficient cooling systems through sweating, allowing us to remain active in high temperatures." Some students looked bored, but June noticed Hana was watching with fascination. Even Professor Minji seemed impressed by his research. "In conclusion," June said, "humans evolved on a world that demanded adaptability and endurance. These traits helped us survive on Earth and will help us thrive among the stars." When June finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Professor Minji spoke. "Excellent work, June. This is precisely why we're visiting Earth, to understand how different environments shape the evolution of intelligent species." Later that day, Professor Minji asked June to stay after class. When the other students had left, she spoke gently. "I've noticed the difficulties you've been having with some classmates," she said. June looked down. "It's nothing I can't handle, Professor." "I know that," she replied. "That's why I haven't intervened more directly. But I want you to know that I chose Earth for our field trip deliberately." June looked up in surprise. Sometimes understanding comes through experience, not lectures, Professor Minji said with a small smile. I believe this trip will be educational for everyone in ways they don't expect. That evening, June checked his equipment for the trip. The academy had provided all students with special suits to help them adjust to Earth conditions. His own suit was much lighter than the others. It was mostly for data collection, not environmental protection. As he was testing his equipment in the common area, Taiho and his friends entered. They had their Earth suits draped over their arms. These look uncomfortable, complained Diok. Why do we need such heavy gear? Because Earth is a harsh planet, Taiho said. High gravity, dense atmosphere, unpredictable weather. Then he noticed June and walked over to him. Enjoying the thought of watching us struggle on your primitive world? I'm just preparing for the trip, June answered calmly. Listen, human, Taiho said, lowering his voice. Even on your home planet, you'll still be the weakest one there. Don't think anything will change. June said nothing, but inside he felt a strange, new confidence growing. Taiho and the others had no idea what they were about to experience. The next morning, all students boarded the interstellar vessel bound for Earth. Through the viewport, June watched the stars blur as they entered faster-than-light travel. For the first time in months, he was going home, and soon, his classmates would see Earth through their own eyes. As the ship accelerated, June caught Hana looking at him from across the cabin. She gave him a small smile, which he returned. At least one person seemed genuinely interested in learning about his world. June leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. In just a few hours, everything would change. The ship arrived at Earth's orbital station after 16 hours of travel. Through the large viewing windows, the blue planet filled their vision. White clouds swirled across its surface. Oceans and continents were clearly visible. It's so blue, whispered Hana, standing next to June. And there's so much water. The other students pressed against the windows. Many had never seen Earth except in holograms. Despite their earlier mockery, they seemed impressed by the view. Students, please gather your equipment, called Professor Minji. We will board the shuttle to the surface in 10 minutes. Remember to activate your environmental suits before we land. June felt excitement building in his chest. He had been away from Earth for almost 4 months. The familiar pull of real gravity would feel good after living with the station's artificial gravity. As they moved toward the shuttle bay, June spotted a familiar figure waiting for them. A tall woman in a Green Ranger uniform with the Yellowstone Park insignia on the sleeve. She had the same dark hair and eyes as June. Subin, he called out, moving faster. His older sister smiled widely and hugged him. Welcome home, little brother, she said. You've grown since I last saw you. Students, this is Ranger Subin. Professor Minji introduced her to the class. She will be our guide during our stay in Yellowstone National Park. She is also June's sister, as some of you may have guessed. Subin bowed slightly to the class. Welcome to Earth. I'm excited to show you one of our planet's most impressive natural preserves. Please follow all safety instructions during your visit. The students boarded the shuttle. As they strapped into their seats, Taiho gave June a dismissive look. Your sister is just a park guide. I thought she would be someone important. June smiled slightly. Rangers are important on Earth. They protect our natural areas and help people stay safe in the wilderness. The shuttle engines roared to life. They detached from the station and began their descent toward Earth's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, the shuttle began to shake. Several students looked alarmed. This is normal, Subin assured them through the intercom. Earth's atmosphere is dense compared to many of your home planets. The friction causes vibration. The shaking increased. June was used to it, but he noticed Taiho's knuckles turning pale as he gripped his seat. Daok had closed all 4 of his eyes. Sook's insect-like mandibles were clicking rapidly, and what June had learned was a sign of distress. Only Hana seemed curious, rather than afraid. She watched out the window as clouds rushed past them. The shuttle broke through the cloud cover, and suddenly the landscape of Wyoming spread below them. Mountains, forests, and wide-open spaces came into view. The shuttle slowed and descended toward a landing pad near the entrance to Yellowstone National Park. When the shuttle doors opened, warm summer air rushed in. June took a deep breath. The smell of pine trees and fresh air filled his lungs. After months of filtered station air, it felt wonderful. The alien students activated their environmental suits before stepping out. These weren't full spacesuits, but rather exoskeletal frames with atmospheric filters and gravity compensators. They made the aliens look bulkier than normal. June needed no such equipment. He walked easily down the ramp in his regular academy uniform, his movements fluid and natural. "Please note the time," said Professor Minji. "It is 10 a.m. local time. The temperature is 24 degrees Celsius. The gravity is standard Earth gravity, which is 1.3 times the galactic standard you are accustomed to." As the students stepped onto Earth's surface, the effects were immediate and visible. Despite their suits, they moved with obvious effort. Their steps were heavier, their posture strained. Taeho, who normally stood tall and proud, was slightly hunched. Diok needed to use all 4 arms to balance himself. "You will feel the increased gravity for the first day or two," Subin explained. "Your suits will help, but your bodies need time to adjust. Move slowly and tell us if you feel dizzy or tired." June walked alongside his sister, his stride normal and confident. For the first time since joining the academy, he felt physically stronger than his classmates. On the station, the artificial gravity had been set to galactic standard, putting him at a disadvantage. Here he was in his element. "We will start with an easy hike along a boardwalk trail," Subin announced. "It's a 3-kilometer loop that will show you some of Yellowstone's famous geothermal features." 3 kilometers seemed like nothing to June, but as they began walking, he realized it would be a challenge for the others. Even with their exoskeletal support, the aliens moved slowly. Some were already breathing hard after just a few hundred meters. "Is this what you feel like all the time on your planet?" Hana asked June as they walked. She was handling the conditions better than most, but her voice showed strain. "Yes," said June. "This is normal for me. I was actually uncomfortable on the station because the gravity was too light." "Amazing," she said. "No wonder humans have such strong muscle density. You evolved in this heavy gravity." As they reached the first geothermal pool, with its vivid blue water and rising steam, Subin explained the extremophil bacteria that gave the pool its color. The alien students listened with newfound respect, perhaps realizing that a planet that could produce such strange life forms might be more complex than they had assumed. "The temperature in that pool is 80 degrees Celsius, Subin explained. "Hot, enough to kill most life forms, but these bacteria thrive there." "Like humans," said Hana quietly to June. "Thriving in conditions others find extreme." By midday, they stopped for lunch near a series of small geysers. The temperature had risen to 29 degrees Celsius. June and Subin were comfortable, but many of the alien students were struggling with the heat, even with their suits' cooling systems. Taeho sat with his friends, his normally perfect appearance disheveled. His silver skin had a dull tint from exertion. He avoided looking at June. After lunch, they continued their hike. Dark clouds began gathering in the distance. "Weather patterns on Earth can change quickly," Subin told the group. "We might experience a thunderstorm this afternoon." "A storm? Here? Now?" asked Daok nervously. On his homeworld, weather was controlled by atmospheric regulators. The idea of unpredictable weather was frightening to many of the aliens. "It's perfectly normal," June assured them. "We'll take shelter if needed." As if on cue, a low rumble of thunder sounded in the distance. Several students jumped. Suk made a high-pitched sound of alarm. "That's just thunder," explained Subin. "The sound of electrical discharges in the clouds. It's loud but harmless as long as we take proper precautions." They quickened their pace toward a visitor center half a kilometer ahead. The first drops of rain began to fall. To June, it was refreshing after the hot day, but the alien students hurried along in obvious distress, unused to water falling from the sky. Just as they reached the visitor center, a bright flash of lightning split the sky, followed immediately by a tremendous crack of thunder. Taeho and several others ducked involuntarily. Inside the building, they watched through large windows as the storm intensified. Rain pounded the roof. Lightning flashed repeatedly. This is considered a mild storm on Earth, June told them. Nothing unusual. Tejo stared at him, then at the raging elements outside. For once, he had no mocking comments. When the storm passed an hour later, they continued their exploration. The trails were wet and muddy now, presenting a new challenge. The alien students slipped and struggled while June moved confidently across the uneven terrain. That evening, as they settled into their cabins at the park lodge, Hana approached June, who was sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "I never understood before," she said, sitting beside him. "Your species didn't just survive this world. You thrived on it. That requires a strength none of us recognized." June smiled as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. "This is just the first day," he said. "Tomorrow we go deeper into the park." From across the compound, he noticed Tejo watching them, his expression unreadable. But something had changed. The mockery in his eyes was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like uncertainty. On the third day of their expedition, the morning dawned clear and bright. The students gathered outside their cabins, looking less confident than they had at the academy. Their environmental suits were dirty from yesterday's muddy trails. Some had made adjustments to their gravity compensators after struggling with Earth's pull. "Today we will visit Mammoth Hot Springs," Subin announced. "It's one of Yellowstone's most impressive features. We'll take the trail bus for part of the journey, then hike the remaining distance." As they boarded the bus, June noticed Tejo sitting alone away from his usual group of friends. The Proximan looked tired. The constant effort of moving in Earth's gravity was wearing on all the alien students. Professor Minji sat at the front of the bus with Subin. "Students, today's lesson focuses on adaptation. Pay special attention to the extremophile organisms we'll see at the hot springs. These life forms thrive in conditions that would kill most species." The bus rumbled along the park road. Through the windows they could see herds of bison grazing in the distance. Several students took pictures and recordings, fascinated by the large earth mammals. "Those animals are massive," said Deok. "The gravity here should make large land animals difficult to evolve." "Bison adapted to the environment," June explained. "Their strength and endurance allow them to thrive despite the gravity." When they reached the trailhead, everyone got off the bus. The path to Mammoth Hot Springs was steeper than yesterday's trail. Looking up at the incline, some students sighed with resignation. "Remember to stay on the boardwalks," Subin warned. "The ground around the hot springs is fragile and the water can be acidic and dangerously hot." As they began climbing the trail, June felt energized. The clean mountain air and familiar gravity made him feel stronger than he had in months. He walked easily beside Subin at the front of the group. Behind them, the alien students moved slowly. Even with their environmental suits, Earth was taking a toll on them. Tejo, usually so graceful, now plodded along with visible strain. "Your brother seems to be enjoying himself," Subin said quietly to June. "It's good to see him confident." "It's different here," June replied. "On the station they had the advantage. Here—" He trailed off, not wanting to seem like he was gloating. "Here, they learn what it means to be human," Subin finished for him. She smiled knowingly. When they reached Mammoth Hot Springs, the alien students gasped despite their fatigue. The terraced formations of white, orange, and brown mineral deposits looked like a frozen waterfall. Steam rose from pools of blue and green water. The smell of sulfur filled the air. "These terraces are made of limestone," Subin explained. "The hot water brings minerals from deep underground to the surface. When the water cools, the minerals form these structures." Professor Minji gathered the students on a wide viewing platform. "The water in these springs is around 70 degrees Celsius, she said. Yet there are microorganisms living in it. Some thrive in the hot, acidic conditions that would instantly kill other life forms. This is a perfect example of how life adapts to extreme environments." She looked at June. "Just as different intelligent species adapt to their respective homeworlds. Humans evolved on a planet with high gravity, wide temperature variations, and unpredictable weather patterns. These conditions shaped their biology and their technology. Taeho listened intently, his eyes moving between Professor Minji and June. He seemed to be thinking deeply about something. After Professor Minji's lecture, the students were allowed to explore the boardwalks around the hot springs. June found himself walking alongside Hana. "Your world is beautiful," she said. "Harsh, but beautiful." "Thank you," June replied. "I missed it more than I realized." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. It lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to make everyone freeze. "What was that?" asked Diak nervously. "Just a small earthquake," Subin explained calmly. "They're common in Yellowstone. This area sits on a supervolcano. Don't worry, that was a very minor tremor." "Earthquake? Supervolcano?" Sook's voice was high with alarm. "This is normal here?" "Perfectly normal," June assured them. "Earth's crust is active. It moves and shifts. That's why we have mountains and valleys." The alien students looked around uneasily. The idea of the ground itself being unstable was clearly disturbing to them. On their homeworlds, such geological activity was either non-existent or carefully controlled. A few minutes later, a second tremor shook the area, stronger than the first. Immediately afterward, one of the nearby geysers erupted, sending a column of hot water and steam 10 meters into the air. The sudden eruption caused panic among the students. They scattered in different directions, forgetting Subin's warning. "Just stay on the boardwalk, stay calm," Subin called out. "The boardwalks are safe. The geyser is a normal reaction to the earth movement." June hurried to help guide students back to the main platform. As he rounded a corner, he saw Taeho standing too close to the edge of a blue hot pool. The boardwalk was wet from the geysers. Spray. Taeho looked disoriented. He raised his hand to his head as if trying to use his telepathic abilities. But something was wrong. His eyes weren't glowing as they normally did when he used his powers. Earth's magnetic field, June realized. Professor Minji had mentioned in class that some planets had electromagnetic fields that could interfere with proximan telepathy. Taeho was trying to sense his surroundings but couldn't. "Taeho, be careful," June called. "Step back from the edge." Taeho turned toward June's voice, but as he did, his foot slipped on the wet boardwalk. He lost his balance and fell toward the hot spring. Without hesitation, June ran forward. The heat from the pool was intense, the steam scalding his face. He grabbed Taeho's arm just as the proximan was about to fall into the water. With strength born from a lifetime in Earth's gravity, June pulled Taeho back onto the boardwalk. The hot steam had already burned Taeho's exposed skin where his environmental suit didn't cover. June's own hands and arms stung from the brief exposure to the steam. "Are you okay?" June asked, helping Taeho to a sitting position on the boardwalk. Taeho looked stunned. He stared at June, then at the bubbling hot spring that would have caused severe injuries or worse. "You saved me," he said slowly. "Why?" "After how I treated you." Before June could answer, Subin and Professor Minji reached them, followed by other students. "What happened?" Professor Minji asked, kneeling beside Taeho. "He slipped and almost fell in," June explained. "I think he was trying to use his telepathy, but it wasn't working properly." Professor Minji nodded. "Earth's magnetic field and ionospheric conditions can interfere with proximan abilities. I should have warned you all." Subin examined Taeho's burns. "These need treatment. Let's get you back to the first aid station." As they helped Taeho to his feet, June noticed the other students watching. Their expressions had changed. There was no mockery now, only a new kind of respect in their eyes. Back at the lodge, Subin treated June's minor burns with a first aid kit. The special cream she applied immediately soothed the pain. "You acted quickly," she said. "That hot spring is over, 80 degrees. It would have caused serious damage." "I didn't think about it," June admitted. "I just reacted." Later that evening, as June sat on the porch of his cabin watching the stars come out, he heard footsteps. Taeho approached, his burned arm bandaged, his normally confident posture humbled. "May I join you?" he asked, his voice uncertain. June nodded, moving over to make space on the bench. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Taiho spoke. I don't understand how you can be so adapted to such a hostile world, he said. June looked out at the darkening forest, the distant mountains silhouetted against the night sky. It's not hostile if it's your home, he replied simply. The final 2 days of the Earth expedition transformed the class in ways no one had expected. The change was most visible during their morning hike through a forest trail. June no longer walked alone. Hana stayed by his side, asking questions about Earth plants and animals. More surprisingly, Taiho joined them, his previous hostility replaced by quiet curiosity. These trees, Taiho said, looking up at the tall pines. They grow naturally this way? Without guidance? Yes, June replied. Earth plants evolved over millions of years to fit their environments. No one designed them. Taiho touched the rough bark of a pine tree. On my world, we shape all plants. Nothing grows wild anymore. The morning sunlight filtered through the forest canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Birds sang in the branches above them. A small deer crossed the path ahead, stopping to look at the strange group before bounding away into the undergrowth. So much life, Hana whispered, and so much variety. That afternoon, Professor Minji gathered the students in a meadow for their final lesson. Everyone sat on the grass. Most had adjusted somewhat to Earth's gravity by now, though they still moved more slowly than June. Over the past 4 days, you have experienced a world very different from your own, Professor Minji began. Earth is classified as a Category 4 planet because of its high gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature variations, geological activity, and unpredictable weather. By galactic standards, it is an extreme environment. She looked around at you, the students. Yet this is the world that produced humanity. The intelligence in our galaxy takes many forms. Each species evolved to match its home environment. The true measure of advancement is not telepathy or technology, but adaptability. June listened with pride. For the first time since joining the academy, he felt that his human heritage was being recognized as valuable, not primitive. Tonight, Professor Minji continued, we will experience something uniquely Earth. Ranger Subin has arranged a traditional campfire. This is a social gathering around controlled fire, a practice dating back to humanity's earliest days. That evening, as darkness fell, the students gathered around a stone-ringed fire pit. Subin carefully built and lit a fire. The alien students watched with fascination as flames rose from the wood, crackling and sending sparks into the night air. Humans have used fire for over 1 million years, Subin explained. It gave us warmth, protection, light, and the ability to cook food. Fire helped make us human. The dancing flames cast flickering shadows on their faces. The smell of wood smoke filled the air. Above them, stars appeared in the clear night sky, more stars than were visible from the light-polluted space station. In Earth traditions, Subin continued, people often share stories around a campfire. Tonight I invite each of you to share something you've learned during our visit. One by one, the students spoke. Deok talked about Earth's diverse ecosystems. Suk mentioned the planet's impressive geological features. Others spoke about the wildlife, the weather, the plant life. When it was Hana's turn, she looked directly at June. I learned that different worlds create different strengths. What might seem like a weakness in one environment could be a strength in another. Finally, it was Taiho's turn. The firelight played across his silver skin as he looked around the circle, his gaze settling on June. I learned that we cannot judge species by our own standards, he said slowly. Humans don't have telepathy because they evolved different strengths, physical endurance, environmental adaptability, and something else I cannot explain. A resilience. He paused. I was wrong about you, June. About all humans. June felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The acknowledgement from his former tormentor meant more than he had expected. Later, as the fire burned low and some students retired to their cabins, Taiho approached June, who sat watching the embers. I owe you an apology. Taiho said, sitting beside him. I treated you badly because you were different, because you lacked abilities I valued. It's okay, June replied. You didn't understand. No, I didn't, Taiho agreed. I thought humans were weak because they evolved on a harsh world. Now I see that harsh world made you strong in ways I never considered. They sat in comfortable silence watching the last flames flicker among the coals. Will things be different when we return to the academy? June asked finally. Taiho nodded. Yes, I will make sure of it. The next morning they packed their equipment and prepared to leave Earth. As June helped load gear onto the shuttle, his sister pulled him aside for a private goodbye. You've grown since you left, Subin said, hugging him tightly. Not just taller, stronger inside. Thanks for being our guide, June said. I think you helped them understand Earth, understand us. She smiled. I just showed them our world. You showed them what Earth humans are made of. The journey back to the orbital station passed quickly. As Earth grew smaller through the viewport, June noticed his classmates watching his homeworld with newfound respect. In the artificial gravity of the ship, they regained their physical advantages, moving easily once again. But something fundamental had changed in how they viewed humans. A week later, they were back in their classroom on Station Epsilon. Professor Minji had them write reports about their Earth experience. June read over his final paragraph. Earth shaped humanity through its challenges. Our strength, endurance, and adaptability come from evolving on a world that demanded these traits. What seemed like disadvantages in space, our dense muscles, our need for specific atmospheric conditions, our lack of telepathic abilities, are actually adaptations that helped us thrive on our homeworld. Understanding different evolutionary paths helps us appreciate the unique strengths of all intelligent species. After class, June walked to the station's main observation deck. Through the large window, he could see distant stars, each potentially orbited by worlds with their own unique life forms. He no longer felt like an outsider here. He heard footsteps and turned to see Taiho and Hana approaching. We're forming a study group for xenobiology, Hana said. We wanted to know if you would join us. Professor Minji suggested we focus on environmental adaptations, Taiho added. Your Earth perspective would be valuable. June smiled. I'd like that. As they discussed meeting times, a new student passed by. June recognized the species, an Eo, Arcturian, tall and thin with pale blue skin. Is that a human with you? The new student asked Taiho, their tone slightly dismissive. I heard they're quite primitive. Taiho straightened, his eyes meeting the Arcturians. Don't underestimate them, he said firmly. I've been to Earth. Humans aren't just surviving in the galaxy. They're the ones most prepared to thrive in it. The Arcturian looked surprised, then walked away. June felt a surge of gratitude toward Taiho. Later, as they parted ways, Taiho paused. June, I've been wondering. On Earth, when you saved me at the hot spring, did you hesitate? Even for a moment? June thought about it. No, he said honestly. It didn't matter how you had treated me. I just saw someone in danger. Taiho nodded slowly. Perhaps that is another kind of strength we could learn from humans. As June watched Taiho and Hana walk away, he reflected on how much had changed. The Earth field trip had indeed turned the tables, but not in the way he had expected. It wasn't about proving his tormentors wrong or getting revenge. It was about building understanding, about showing that different worlds create different kinds of strength and all had value in the vast, diverse galaxy they shared.